Okay. Shit.
So the world's over.
The world is fucked. The world is fucked.
Yeah.
Okay, let me gather my thoughts. I'll try to. All right, so. Well, first, can I take up your time? Can I take a moment of your time to talk about what is on my mind? Okay, so we like went over saying that like technological advancement is exponentially like advancing, but then like the piece of that is that okay, yeah, technology can advance and innovate very quickly, but like the culture isn't maybe as quick to respond to that, and like this argument is kind of like proving why it's the culture will keep up. The culture will keep up with the technology. And a lot of that has to do with, like I made these connections of like, okay, you look at the iPhone, you get these early adopters, and then slowly the early adopters influence like the mid-tier masses to eventually like everyone ends up having an iPhone. So I was like wondering why is that? Why is that happening? And a lot of it has to do with first, and I'll go through the process. So you have first technology is the one that's creating it, obviously. And then the early adopters are usually like multimedia producers or like people that need to use that technology for their work. So then there's that. And then after that, you get these celebrities or social influencers that adopts that technology because they want to like be on the inside of the community, to be feeling like they're important, so to speak, like Kim Kardashian or Kanye West getting the iPhone. It's like, shit, I want to be like them. And then that's when the shift happens then to then the masses start to be like, oh, these individuals with like social clout have these pieces of technology and I want that now. So like at first with the early adopter phase, there's still like a level of like uncertainty with the masses until the celebrities and the influencers get a hold of it. That's when the shift happens. Same thing with the iPhone. So then what happens after that? Well, you got all these people now using that platform. And then from there, this is kind of like secondary, but you get businesses on there because businesses follow the awareness of where the masses are. And then after that, they start having all these ads and they kind of like cause disruption to the community because of that reason. So same thing happened with Facebook, right? And the reason why I think that technology is always the forefront, the first thing, is because they need to create that technology to create a platform for all of these humans, people to get onto that platform. And then as like a creator in our capitalistic society, the creators, like the early adopters, the multimedia producers, they want that piece of technology so they can create high quality content. Like work is very important in a capitalistic world. And the more you work, the more efficient your work process is, the better quality product you're going to be able to create. So people like James Cameron that are creating like Avatar, for instance, he's the one that's like pushing the envelope, the pioneer, so to speak, of using this newfound piece of technology. Like Lion King, for instance, with VR, like they're going into these worlds and they're creating in virtual reality to be able to produce this multimedia, to produce this film. So the whole narrative is that you have this process flow, and the quicker technology speeds up, the more innovation there is, the more the people with clout, the influence that are producing media, multimedia, are going to want to quickly get in on that because of capitalism driving towards like a higher quality product, and then social like clout with influencers, celebrities, and then it like funnels down to like the masses, businesses, advertising, and all that. You see it the same thing with iPhone. You see it with Instagram. You see it with Facebook. The same process every time. They create the technology. The multimedia producers get on there, the early adopters. Now the celebrities get on there, the masses, businesses, advertising, and we're like on like the end phase right now with Instagram until there's a new shift in technology, which is the Tesla, because now there's a new technological platform where, again, early adopters can get in on it. But eventually it's going to get to a point where like kind of the celebrities are going to get Tesla, the masses are going to get it, then businesses and advertising, all that shit's going to happen. So like, fuck. I'm trying to paint the picture. Are you seeing it?
So what is like the framework of like that this is all inside of, or like what's your conclusion from it?
The conclusion is that media controls us, and media controls the masses, and technology controls the media. And technology, if it's exponentially advancing, is going to have exponential advancement on media in the production of media, to then the media influencing our culture. So the whole idea that like, oh, culture is not going to be able to keep up with technological advancement, I think it's false.
Okay, so it's like this is in reference to like our like what we talked about culture not being able to keep up. I was talking about culture not in the context of like music and art and that kind of culture. I mean culture more broadly, I guess, which would include morals and stuff like that. That's mostly where I would point to when I'm saying like we won't be able to keep up, like our culture won't be able to keep up with like introducing new technologies that give us more power or that bring up ethical questions. I don't think that we can update fast enough our culture or our morality more specifically.
Well, the interesting thing with that is like the creatives and artists, they're usually the higher moral standard because they're in the public eye. They're always trying to better themselves with like personal growth and stuff like that. So I think the influencers, like celebrities on the forefront of our media, are the ones that are like the heroes that try to set the expectation of like how you should act. And like if they aren't acting morally, then we call them out pretty quickly.
I guess so. A thing that maybe would make it more clear is like I don't think it's so much about I think where the main issue is that again, I bring this up frequently, like the abortion thing, the abortion issue, where this is something that is in the eye of, and maybe a less controversial example is like data ownership, data privacy kind of thing. Like if you get on Facebook, like you don't own your data, like they're just mining your data, and you don't have a say in it, right? And so this is a new introduced thing that we now have to contemplate and think about. How do we legislate this? Like, is this right and ethical? And things like that are just going to keep coming up where it's clear that there should be some kind of government intervention there, but at the rate that things are advancing, they're going to be too frequent and only grow in their complexity.
So you're talking about how we implement the technology, not the users on the technology. As far as what is morality or the expectation of morality. So it even goes even deeper.
So I mean, it's like the morality of, I mean, like I hate to use that abortion example just because it's so controversial and like there's so much to unpack. But like because like right now,
guns.
Right now
is that one?
Guns is a good enough one. Like
because it's a technology.
Yeah, and like we're split on this issue of whether people should have guns, and we can't even have a conversation about what guns are different. Like you just like there are people who will say that people shouldn't have any guns, and then there are people who say people should be able to have any gun they want, like tanks. Why not? And there's so.
It's not the technology that's bad, though. I guess it gets a little gray area if the technology is like this conscious being at that point, right?
Well, what I'm trying to paint is that I think we have a problem outside of just the problems that we have to deal with. We have a problem with solving problems. Like we can't even have a discussion as a culture.
What if it's not the discussion?
What if it's
a good discussion the role models? Guns? What if it's the role models that use that technology that's leading the path, not necessarily definitely talking about it helps. But like at the end of the day, like actions speak louder than words.
So how would you, for instance, in the gun example, how would you implement, or how would that play out?
It's the people with social clout influence that are the ones that are the role models for how we should act. So like with Instagram, for instance, like if it wasn't for like Kim Kardashian or like all these celebrities painting us this picture of like, oh, this is how you should use Instagram, then we wouldn't gravitate towards that cultural shift of like how we should behave on these platforms. So if like we have, I don't know, virtual reality, like you're again with the progression of this, people with social influence use technology, and they're the gold standard of like how you should be using it morally.
I don't think that. I think that just because you have a lot of clout doesn't necessarily mean that you're acting morally. Like
you get weeded out.
Or that, I don't think so. I think that we have a lot of perverse incentives inside of Instagram. Obviously, like it's not built to bring you a satisfying, fulfilling life. Like it's built to make Instagram money. And so inside of that, there's a lot like you can.
It does though. It does bring fulfillment.
You can play the game to beat the Instagram algorithm, and same with other social media platforms, and more broadly in capitalist society, like you can game the system, or in politics you can game the system. Like having being in a position of power or authority or influence doesn't like imply that you are morally, elevated,
ethical, but you're at the subjugation. I don't know if that's a word. Subjective by judgment of the masses. Yeah. So now people that are in the public eye have to create this image for a sense of character. So
which also is another perverse incentive, though, because
perverse. What's that mean? So
it's an incentive that it gives you an outcome that you don't want. It's just like I'm trying to think of a good example, like a social media one, or my favorite one's like multi-level marketing, or like pyramid schemes kind of stuff. So like the basic structure of that, it's like one person has to get a bunch of people to buy their stuff, and then they like those people sell their stuff or get other people to buy it, or like to come on board into the pyramid.
But they don't have social clout. So I'm talking about like the LeBron James or like the Will Smiths of the world that like have a genuine connection with their audience.
Right. I was trying to lay out like for instance, my friend was involved in I think it was called like Vector or something like that. It's called Knives, and the structure is basically like sell this stuff to your friends and family and get them on board, right? And so what that turns people into is like a family and friend using kind of person, like who works for this company. Like they use their relationships with their family and friends as a way to make this company money. And like obviously that's not a healthy way like to have friendship and relate to your family.
And that's what's happening right now with like social platforms too. So it's like something that us as humanity doesn't want, but it ends up happening because there's influence on that platform.
And so what I was getting at with like a social media influencer or something, just because they're subject to the judgment of the masses, like it doesn't mean, first of all, the masses could be overly sensitive, or could be or could have poor judgment themselves. Like, although it's true that like if you get in a dynamic system, like when you take the average of everyone's opinions, like you usually get about what's right. But that doesn't necessarily account for the fact that some voices are a lot louder than others, and so you can have it skewed in that way. So,
and what influence would that be?
Influence of what?
Like the people with the most influence, I would say, would be the people that again have the genuine connection, not the salesperson, because you see that too. Like you see the culture of like people just we could go up. People just like fucking selling you shit on YouTube or Instagram, and they don't give a fuck. They're just trying to make money, and you can weed those people out, and you know damn well that.
Right, but people can't weed them out. I think if you're great at marketing and you're a very powerful influencer, it's because you've tricked everyone into thinking that you're genuine. Not always.
Like Gary Vee?
Well, I don't know much about him specifically, but and I don't want to paint everyone like that. Like obviously there are influencers who are genuinely oriented and like true to like what they're saying is how they live.
Right.
But there are people who rise to that same level of authority, or not authority, but influence.
I think
just by gaming the system. So it's hard to know who to trust, and I wouldn't count on people just having influence to have some sort of moral elevation, like with respect to everyone else.
Well, the interesting thing is you see this shift now with all the social platforms where it's becoming more authentic. And that could be a marketing ploy, but it could also be that like this level of transparency now is heightened, that we like get a greater sense of like who that person actually is. Mm-hmm. And it's going to get even more transparent when we move into like virtual reality, for instance, where we're literally interacting with these people. So there's that effect. And then there's like, yeah, they might be making a lot of money, but like they're making a lot of money either in two ways: that they're bringing actual value for humanity, or that they're doing market arbitrage where they're like buying low and selling high. Like the value of what the product is super low, but they hype it up with the use of like their communication to make it seem more valuable. And that's like the salesperson kind of thing. So maybe I'm saying like with these new technology pieces, platforms, like the level of morality is getting like more and more refined. The people with influence are the people that are actually positively impacting 1 billion people, not the people that have $1 billion now. Mm. And even more, if we're moving towards a sustainable world, then we're not going to need our basic resources to be met. It's only going to be about like the self-actualization of being like true to yourself and actually like living a good life that's like set by your values and morals. Mm. It's going to be less about the money, because we already have our basic needs met. Mm. And like to go on your fulfillment thing, I think technology does give us a higher level of fulfillment. And that's like the issue that we're running into right now, that like the bar is set so high because like Instagram, it's all accessible. Like anyone can get onto that platform and live the life that they dream to live and get money from it and be sustainable. But like the only ones that can do that are like the ones with the social clout and influence. But the opportunity is there. And so now we have this whole humanity now where they have the opportunity and they're like, I could be living this life, but I'm living in the day-to-day working this 9-to-5 job that I fucking hate. Mm-hmm. And you have this like comparison game, FOMO, all the time now. Hmm. And but the cool part is that it's all accessible. We have the opportunity to live a life of fulfillment. So when technology comes along and meets all of our basic sustainable resource basic needs, then now it's like, oh, now I can focus my time living in this digital world, like doing what I love to do instead of working a day job that I fucking hate.
Yeah, I think we'll need to have that conversation before we get to having everyone's needs met. Like, I don't think that you can. I don't think you can just say, hey, by next December, everybody is going to have their basic needs met and you can do whatever you find fulfilling. I don't think, I mean, on the individual level, I think that's difficult. And on the cultural level, probably more difficult. Like, you're totally restructuring society. And if we don't have the conversation far in advance of that, I think we're in for like, we're gonna rip a huge hole in the fabric of our culture and society. And if we don't have a plan for how to patch it, then something bad might fill it, or it might just tear, or something unpredictable will happen. Just because in a complex system, like you can't predict what happens when you meet everyone's basic needs and they can do whatever they find fulfilling. Like, there's a huge cultural shift.
Oh yeah, and we have to. Do you agree that we're going to it?
If we make it.
Oh shit.
Yeah, I mean.
But like, just one example, like Tesla, you're talking about restructuring. Like, we're literally pushing our humanity towards solar sustainable energy. Right. Like, all of these oil companies are dead in the water. They're no more. Mm-hmm. Once Tesla becomes a mass adopted thing, it's like That's like what? I don't know, 5-10% of our economy just like dead. And then it's even more than that as we like get automated agriculture and like automated manufacturing.
Yeah.
Like essentially we could live, this coronavirus is proving it. Like we could live off of Amazon. We could live, well, I guess to a certain extent. But like, what if Amazon comes out with like I think they already have it, like a food delivery service. Like in a sense, if all of our grocery stores died and all we have left is like things on the digital platforms, we could live. Yeah. And I think it's going to be even more in our face, like showing us that that's a possibility and even the truth, because it's like all these big tech companies are the ones that is paving the road to us living sustainable.
Yeah, I think that's one part of the story. But my concern is, even with all of the huge opportunity that, for instance, like total automation of labor, the opportunity that brings is huge for humanity, and for people living fulfilling lives. There's another part of that is tied to any kind of technological progress, where like you're gonna have progress that's good, and you're gonna have progress which introduces, even the good progress is going to introduce ethical questions and all kinds of moral issues, and it's also going to, for instance, like it'll limit autonomy, and it will make life more complicated on the individual level and the societal level. It'll probably almost certainly require a bunch of legislation, more authoritarian kind of government, where the government's involved in just about everything.
The interesting thing with technology, though, I mean, we're still early in the phase of like transition, but like anything that has been technology hasn't been governed, and yet it still somehow manages to work.
What do you mean?
Like, well, no, that's not true. Because like Facebook, there's government laws for certain things.
Like,
and like, AI, like, cars, yeah.
Well, no, I mean cars as in like automobiles. Like, like cars are technology. Mm-hmm. And like,
yeah, okay.
How much government goes into, legislating how cars are built, safety on cars, building roads, traffic laws, all this stuff. I mean, government is, and as technologies become more and more powerful, as a technology like increases the, like, and to go back to the gun thing. So in the last couple hundred years, guns went from, like a one-shot musket, which was hardly accurate, misfired some of the time, and took a minute to reload. And now you have a gun that, you can shoot off 50 rounds in, in a few seconds and then reload. Obviously very different. One of them is much more powerful. And our technology, that's just one example of how technology can just so quickly or on such a can make such a huge leap in giving people more power. And I don't think that we can keep up with that with our morals. Like if you get more powerful, you have to be more moral.
So,
I mean, you don't have to be. I mean, you could be immoral and just like do whatever the hell you want. But if you want society to run properly, if you give people a bunch of power, like the capacity to use force or control or whatever, as you increase that capacity on the individual level, if you want society to work, you have to have people's morality and ethics track with that. Otherwise, you just have someone who, has, mind control powers. Like, let's say we all have mind control powers, and someone just having a bad day, like, well, I'm going to mind control everyone to kill themselves, and that'll make me feel better. It's like, well, I mean, maybe we shouldn't have introduced mind control yet.
Right.
Like, maybe it was too soon for that because not everyone was morally apt enough. And that's kind of a silly example, but so things like guns are, I mean, that's a real thing.
You know, we need laws to protect people. Yeah, and there are people who will just be like, I'm upset today, or I've been upset, I'm depressed, and stew for, 2 weeks and plot a mass shooting. It's like, okay, well, I mean, maybe we should be questioning, like, how much power should people have? And shit, if, like, and that's AI, technology more broadly, too. If AI is that powerful, that all it takes is one, quote-unquote, like, shooting, and we're all fucked. Yeah. I mean, it's going to get like that. I mean, like, if, like, an example that, again, is kind of silly, but not very outlandish, really. If you got some, I don't know, some Looney Tune who was technologically apt and scientifically minded and did a bunch of research. Like, I mean, someone could just build a nuclear bomb and just, like, blow up the Earth. And I'm not saying there's an easy way to prevent that, but it's just an example. I mean, there are, like, I guess groups who, like, rogue groups who are, like, trying to make bombs and stuff like that, but which is pretty scary. But yeah. I mean, all it takes is one bad decision. Right. It's to point to the fact that if we're gonna keep going with technology, and it like increases the dynamics of our system, like it just gives people more power, like they can push a lot harder in whatever direction. If you want your society to not blow up or have some terrible catastrophe happen, you need to make sure that everyone who has that power is capable of using it properly. And the issue, and what I'm worried about is that we can't keep up with it. And the issue is that humans aren't perfect. There's going to be mistakes, even if we strive for that ideal of being positive. Like, it takes one bad move and we're all kind of fucked. Right. If we're all linked up into this, like, brain interface. To introduce an idea that kind of, like, adds more context to this. So, like, the way I see it is, like, how we are to house pets, like dogs or cats, is going to be similar to how we are to AI, I think. Is that we are going to reach that level of sustainability where our basic needs are met, like food, water, shelter. Same thing with, like, our house pets. Like, we don't charge our animals to live in our house, to eat food. We just give it to them. Same thing with AI. It's giving us that opportunity for the machine, the system, to just give out free food. So, like, I kind of see it as in, like, we're going to have to create an AI that gives us, that controls us in a way that's, like, it takes care of us. Like how you do with your house pet. Yeah. Like, and the issue with that is, like, some animals are beaten by their owners. Like, same thing could happen with AI. We could give it the highest sense of morality and let it govern us, but there's probably going to be outliers where people are going to get abused by it. Yeah, I mean, I guess I would. I don't even know if we'll get to that point. That seems like, I mean, there's so many bridges to cross between, or maybe there's not. Maybe it's like it happens tomorrow. I don't know. But it seems like that's a ways out, and there's a lot more hurdles that we'll have to cross before we have something like a God AI, which is like, understands, like, the average of our moralities as humans and can govern us, like, in an authoritarian way, and that it would be, like, benevolent and good. I think that's a ways off, and there's a bunch of stuff that's going to come up before then. Well, I think it would all it would take is for one AI to be created that has, like, they call it artificial general intelligence, to just analyze our behavior on these digital platforms, be able to give us insight into our humanity. And if it can, like, look at Go, for instance. It was, like, a month for that shit to be fucking incredible as a game. And then there's AlphaGo. Yeah. And then AlphaZero can beat AlphaGo, like, every single time, like, really easily, and it learned, like, way faster.
It's crazy people don't know about that, actually. Because that is so insane.
And they did it with League. Like, they built a AI that fucking destroys everyone at League of Legends.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it didn't take long once it was built.
And this, I think that kind of points out just how inept we are to handle technological progress. Because although like that's pretty harmless, like having a computer that's really good at playing Go is like pretty harmless. But what it should symbolize is that we're crowding out. We're making computers and machines that are way better at us, or way better at things than us, like by a lot.
Exponentially.
Yeah, and that's something we should think about as a culture, because...
And we invite it, is the scary part. The people that are creating want it to happen.
Because it's like...
Money.
It's money and it's discovery. There's a lot of incentives around it. And like we talked about before, like even if you have the good people who are like, well, we should put the brakes on this because this is unethical, you're still going to have the guy who's like, well, I'm not ethical and this is awesome and I'm curious and I want to discover and make money, so I'm going to do it.
And that's all it's going to take is that one person.
Yeah. And so, but to get back to what I was saying, the fact that we're not talking about these kind of things as a culture, to me, signals, first of all, it's hard to say that we're talking about the wrong things or that we're not paying attention to the right things. I think it's more that there's too many things to pay attention to. Like, to live in today's society and to be even like half expert at all the things you need to do. I mean, or all the things that people might say you should do, like to be actively involved in politics and in your community, and also be physically fit, and also be well-read, and be ethical, and
good at playing music.
Well, maybe not that, but like other things that are like, or like, doing your taxes,
like a social good kind of thing.
Well, doing things that like there's so many things that are just annoying to do, or that are a big commitment time-wise. And like, for instance, politics. I am almost wholly uninterested in politics, and people will often tell me like, you have an obligation to be involved in politics. You have to share your voice, and you have to be an influence in this way. And like, my argument is, I think because I think there's way too many things. There's way too many things to know, and I actually don't think that you can work hard enough so that you know enough about everything. I think it's a losing battle, and I think it's a bad strategy. I think what I would much rather do, I think what works out better, is if you had everyone focus on the 1, 2, or 3 things that they're most interested in and become experts and great at that in whatever ways you can add value. So if you can add value in politics, or in your local community, or in making music, if that's what you're interested in doing, you're going to go a lot further doing what you're interested in and actually committing to that 1 or 2 things. And having everyone do that, I think it would be a lot better than having a bunch of jack of all trades, like someone who's, imagine the whole society is like half participating in politics, half participating in making music, half participating in their job, half participating in parenting, like all of these things that take time and commitment to be good at. If all of society was only half-assing everything that's important in our society, we would have a pretty terrible society, I think. Like nothing, like you have to have experts about things. Like that's how things get well refined and function properly. When you have experts, not just people who are like, I half know about rocket science, so like I'll work for NASA. Like you can't have anyone work for NASA. And
well, that's how we create value, because it's like, if everyone's half-assing,
the people who are really good at things make the valuable stuff.
Yeah. Because, but like it's all just like in the marketplace of ideas and like skills. If everyone's half-assing it, then all it takes is that one person to just focus all their time on that one thing to just surpass that.
Yeah.
All the other people that are just like half-assed at like making music.
Yeah, and I think that's the model we should take on with a lot of stuff. Like I said, politics. I don't. And as
are you
true
familiar
as it is that I feel that I could add value to a political conversation in a lot of ways. In a lot of instances, I'm like, I have a lot to say here, but because there's only so many things you can do with your life, and that's just not the one that I'm interested in. Like, and I'm not saying like don't do things that you aren't interested in. There are things that are important that are difficult to do or that you don't like. You know, they're valuable and important to do. But I think if there are people who are having a conversation,
that's good.
If there's already like a movement or there's an active conversation going on about certain things, then chiming in, to me, if you're not deep into it and an expert, is noise. And that's where I feel like I am often. Where I will chime in is if I feel like there's a conversation going on and
you can bring value to
it. And I can introduce something new and say like, I think you're totally missing like both sides of whatever, or these groups, or whoever's having the conversation. I think you guys are missing this point. Like introduce something new. Like for me to get involved, for instance, the current thing, the Black Lives Matter, I mean, huge cultural uprising that's happened. Like I definitely don't feel compelled to participate in it, for a lot of reasons. But
are you familiar with political science?
I mean, I know the phrase. I don't know like what it means really though.
It's coming at politics with more of a conceptual, like ideological understanding. So it's like when people talk about like libertarianism, it's like having an in-depth understanding of what that means, or like what does capitalism mean? What does being conservative mean? It's all of these like things we hear in politics, but they don't give us an understanding of what that actually means.
Yeah, like the technical definitions of them.
Yeah, and then like I feel like you'd be interested into that because it's like conceptual. It's like big picture thinking. And it's like you're understanding yourself because you're like, oh, I fit in these kind of ideologies. And all the ideologies are like based off of a value structure and like a moral structure too. Yeah. So it gets really in depth, but it's interesting because then you can kind of like pick and choose like different value sets, and it gets like philosophical too. Yeah. But like the politics that's like presented to us in the media is like very different. It's all about just like who has social influence. Well, no, there's a lot of like deep underlying themes and concepts to why that person is getting elected.
Yeah, and I think that's the kind of stuff that is lacking in the cultural conversation. Like an understanding of even people's own values. And yeah, I mean, I think just people not understanding what their own values are.
And then it gets psychological too.
Stuff gets very people, you know, if you know what your values are, like consciously, you can orient yourself properly towards them. If you don't know, you're kind of just flailing about and like you're just pressing a bunch of buttons and seeing what is fulfilling or what makes you happy. If you know what your values are, you can orient more properly or more intentionally.
And that's super important.
And I think it's going to become more important too. Like as we become more powerful with technologies, we're going to have to know what our values are. Like you can't like there comes a point when pressing a button, just flailing around, like it like ruins everything. Like as the buttons become more powerful,
and that
you can really fuck shit up by not being intentional about which buttons you're pressing.
Yeah, because if you're not aligning yourself with your values, you're off track. Like I think if you understand, if you have the self-awareness to know what your values are, then that gives you a path now. And if you are not following that value structure, then you're doing something that isn't true to who you are. And when that happens, then a lot of resentments start building up on like a psychological level. That you're like, I'm not finding fulfillment in this. Well, the reason why is because you're not aligning with your values. Mm. And so like, yeah, and a lot of people don't know what their values are. And a lot of that might be because they don't understand the social sciences. Like to know what your values are, you have to be like really have a good understanding of like psychology, philosophy, political science, sociology, like all the social sciences to be able to like have this higher conscious like thinking of like, oh shit, like this is who I am. Mm-hmm. And that's a lot of studying to be had to be able to figure that out. Yeah. So someone's gonna have to tell us that for us.
And that's what it is now. Like you're born into society, and more or less there's a track set up for you to go to school and get a job, and that's what's valuable. Like it's just sort of implied, like in everything that is in your upbringing. And of course, parents have influence, and they might say like, well, money's not what's important, and that would influence you. But I mean, like more broadly though, like the system is set up to incentivize us to work for it, and to advertise that what's valuable is what aligns with the system,
because they want the power.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's even individuals wanting power. I think that's like a feature of the system, and I don't actually think that powerful individuals, are what control the system in a more broad sense. Like the system, the way I see it is like everyone is basically an input or an output in the system, and are products of the system. So like, or manifestations of the system, I guess. So like a powerful individual who games the system to get power, I don't necessarily blame them. I see them as like just an emergent property of the system that we have built.
Like the one that critically thinks and gets out of it and then sees it for what it is and then like infiltrates.
What are you saying, that individuals like that, or?
Yeah, individuals that like take themselves out of like social constructs can understand like what society's like, and then they like poke holes into it and find loopholes and fuck it up.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Because they understand it. They understand how it works, and they can, if you have a good understanding of something, you can manipulate it to your benefit.
Yeah. I guess more what I'm saying is that I see. I look at everything kind of, not everything. I shouldn't say I look at everything like this, but the way that I look at like power structures or individuals who do bad or good things in a system, or like conservatives or liberals, or progressives, I guess it would be the scale. But I think maybe they're interchangeable. Anyway, like I mean, those things are just manifestations or emergent properties of the system itself. Like, I'm trying to think of how to,
because like you have
like it's just what happens when you have a bunch of, when you have the conditions that we have. Like we have, I almost look at it like it's emergent the way that molecules are emergent, or life is emergent out of, you have the initial conditions of, you go all the way back to the Big Bang, or you have the initial conditions of, like the nuclear weak force and the gravitational force and the mass of the electron, like all of these are, yeah, I mean, like all of these things that are these just initial conditions, and they behave in a way and interact with each other as to produce, atoms and molecules and stars and life and stuff like that.
Like the chaos to order kind of thing.
Right. It's just emergent properties out of the initial conditions. And in our society, it's just like, it's pretty similar. Like you have a bunch of individuals which are loaded up with some kind of software from the evolutionary process, and out of that you get people who you get groups, clumpings of people, which are another emergent thing. And then you get, the need for government is an emergent thing. And people who game the system are an emergent thing.
And people that are gaming the system think that they're beating the system, but in reality, they still are part of the system.
They just are the system.
It's kind of funny.
I mean, they're just all part of it. Like,
yeah, you can't get out of the system.
Yeah, you can't get out of the system. Yeah, right.
So,
I don't know how. I forget why I got onto that. Maybe to make a point, but
yeah,
more or less to say
my thoughts.
That's just like the way that I look at it. I think is.
So like the reason why I think the left and right are split so much of a divide, besides like the superficial like emotional, like I guess it's not superficial, but like everyone's like heated emotionally and they have resentments and stuff like that. But like I think at its core, those two groups are focusing in on the difference of the value sets that they have. Like conservatives, they value something different, which is like tradition, and liberals, they value like more novelty and progressive thought ideas. Yeah. So just binary black and white. If we take that approach, now we have to figure out, if we're talking morals here, what the shared values are as humanity, because that's what's going to push us forward. And I think we need that increasingly more when we have AI, because you don't want a super AI on both sides.
Yeah. Because
now they're battling each other, and it's just creating war at that point, chaos, and it's going to destroy us. So philosophy is going to be super important, because that's what's going to help us figure out, like, as human nature, what those both sides kind of value. And like, do you have any insight in that? Like,
what we all share as value?
What's the shared value? And that's like what I'm trying to figure out with like the podcast and like
I think the most living. I think the most shared values are the things that we evolved to appreciate, like being part of a tribe. Stuff that's as specific as building things, like building physical things, is very satisfying. And for men and women, some of these things are different. Like for women, caring for and raising kids is very satisfying. Not that it's not for men. It's just there's different interests because of evolution and biology. All of these things that you can that are these biologically driven or evolutionarily driven like desires for us, like if it comes from evolution, it's still here, like it's still with us. We're just fulfilling these desires by proximate things, like we've talked about, the desire to be able to like conquer your world or master your environment or something like that. We've proxied that off, or we satisfy that by proxy of doing, becoming good at golf or something like that. Like it's mastery. It's achieving mastery at something.
That just made me think, had an insight of like the human value that we all share is actually being an individual and being free to be an individual. It's like paradoxical, because the thing that we all share is something that can't be shared. Well, yeah, it can be shared, but like in the sense of like, I'm an individual, I have my own world, and I'm introducing you to my world. But at the end of the day, I want to stay in my world.
It's the idea of autonomy, I think, is kind of what you might be getting.
Is that is that the shared value that we all have? I think it is, because it's like
one of the biggest ones that's lacking, and that's being crowded out more and more.
So if we're creating technology, I think it's going to be important to create something where all of us can have our own little worlds, so to speak, to like have the freedom to believe and exist in a space where we can be our own person.
Yeah, but in a way,
and maybe that's why we feel so much loneliness, is there's this subconscious thing going on with technology advancement that is pushing us further and further away, but it's the very thing that's needed to be able to like create a moral system, a moral code that doesn't blow up in our faces.
Are you talking about like a God AI kind of thing?
Like if there's an AI that lets us, well, I'm talking about like everyone feeling so like lonely and disconnected, even though we're all connected in this digital world. It's only going to be increasingly more like that, I think. If like you have a brain computer interface that's like personalizing your insights for you and like having an AI that's like able to model a digital world based off of those psychological insights.
Yeah.
And you just have like this like AI creating this Minecraft looking or whatever world that's like your belief structure.
Yeah.
It's like we're all connected digitally, but like at the same time we're in our own little worlds.
Yeah, I mean it's a possibility. Yeah, it's a very different world from what it is now, and I'm not sure how we get there, or that we. What I see is that we have a lot of problems that will come up before we get to that kind of a place, and to predict that we'll get to that place. I see it as a possibility. I wouldn't predict that we get there just because like the certainty of a future beyond a lot of the things that will come up, like ethical questions or total restructuring of society, like with automation kind of stuff. Like it's hard to predict what path we'll be on 10 years from now. And then, if you consider that from today, 100 branches kind of branch off. And then, we're on one of those branches, right? There's, again, another 100 branches on that. And so to predict it, and some of them diverge again, but to predict what branch we might be on in 100 years is really, really difficult. Just because how much society will change in 10 years. It's like, I won't even know, like all of the factors might be totally different in 10 years or 20 years. So yeah, it's hard to predict if we're going to get to a place like what you're saying. And I think there's other stuff that, as interesting as it is to talk about, and I think it's important to think about because it might not be that far off.
It's like you have to reset your ideas every 10 years because it's a new.
Well, and then it's going to become every 10 minutes. Is the thing.
Jeez.
It becomes as things exponentially increase in the rate of new technologies or new powerful things, like you're gonna have to update your world dude, how long ago was before smartphones? I mean, that was
10 years
in my lifetime. Yeah, the world has totally changed. Like,
true.
And
it was all because of technology.
And it's going to get faster, and the world's going to change a lot more. And there's a constant, we go out too far, and then culture is like, hey, this is too far, and we bring it back, right? But as that rate increases, it's going to get, like, we'll push out too far, and we won't have time to pull it back. Like it'll be pushed out too far, and people will be like, "Hey, that's a problem," and then another problem will be like, "Oh, wait, that's a problem too." And there's like more and more problems, and it's like, how do we rein them all in?
We don't,
and you can't. Like shit just falls apart at that point. It's like imagine like it's like there's like a pushing and pulling, right? And like so, like for instance, if you think about it, like technology will pull us in one direction. We'll be like, "Hey, this is like bad for us," right? Like let's rein it back in and make it align more with us, right? If you have the technology, and it takes some time for us to realize, right? So like it's not like an instant you realize, oh, it's pulling us too far, right? It's like the water, it's almost like the frog in the boiling water boils slowly and doesn't realize it's being boiled. It's like a weird analogy.
But that's us.
But yeah, so it's like, imagine now, for the past, for recent history or whatever, it's been. Like the water will slowly heat up, but we'll have time enough to be like, whoa, this water's getting hot. Like, let's cool it down a little bit, right? As we go into the future, the rate of the water getting hot is going to get faster and faster to the point where I don't think that we'll have time to be like, whoa, let's cool it down. Like it'll get too hot one time, and then it'll be like, oh shit, we burned.
My God.
Yeah.
Future.
That's what I worry about. That's what I worry about. Like,
so how do we stop that? How do we have a thermostat to all this? I
actually don't think you can.
Yeah, no.
Because there's so many ways in which you can boil. You can't pay attention to all of them. Like on the individual level, you can't pay attention to all of them. And I even think on a societal level, if we spread ourselves too thin, we don't have as much influence. Like if there's you know, like if you think about it, like the Revolutionary War or like the Boston Tea Party, or other issues that were around that time, it was like there was taxation without representation, right? And it was like there was one kind of thing. It was like, well, I mean, it was kind of a big deal, but it was like, well, yeah, I mean, like compared to now, it's like, also it's like it was really only a few issues like that. I mean, there was like a handful of issues. Now it's like we still have similar issues like that, but there's a lot of underground issues
that we can't fix.
That like we don't have enough people to pay attention to. Mm. Like if you have 10 issues, you know, you can split the masses 10 ways and have them all shouting loud enough so the government will fix it or whatever. If you have 1,000 issues, you split things 1,000 ways. The groups that are shouting are a lot smaller now, right? And so their voices not only are more crowded by each other's different whatever they're trying to change, but they're also a lot quieter. And as we introduce more issues, that'll just compound and get worse and worse. Like there'll be smaller groups who are quieter and also
that's a good
more
thing
noise
too,
among them.
Because hopefully it's like if we're creating a super AI and we have like thousands of different groups, it's like, yeah, the AI might be super intelligent, but like the noise is getting quieter, hopefully, so it doesn't have as much impact, but probably not.
No, but what I'm saying is that the noise of these groups shouting about issues is what is necessary. Like not the noise. The noise is not what's necessary. Having groups which are shouting about certain issues is what's necessary. That's like the function of the system where it's like, oh, technology or something went out too far. Now we're here to shout about it and pull it back to align with us again. It's a necessary part of keeping the system in equilibrium. It's about maintaining like a homeostasis kind of thing.
So do you think the same thing would be in effect if we have AI? That there'll be thousands of different AIs with different belief structures, and then it'll stay in equilibrium.
Yeah, it's too much to predict that. I don't know what that would even look like, or how we get there. But have you read the Unabomber thing yet?
Mm-hmm.
Dude, I'm telling you should.
Does it talk about all the stuff that we talk about? Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Is that where you got the bulk of your knowledge base?
Not all of it. No. That was something I think I discovered kind of late in my curiosity about AI or technology. Like, I don't remember when it was, but I had like kind of epiphany. Like, it was basically the idea that technology would obsolete us, like in the workforce.
Yeah. And
that society was going to have to change drastically.
And that was what, 10 years ago?
No. It was, I mean, I would have been 12 then. No, I might have been like in my mid-teens or something. Mm. But it was basically like, we're going to go through a transition period where jobs are being automated away and people cannot find work.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, so what do we do with those people? That was my question. And I was
house pets.
I don't know.
House pets.
I mean,
they're just there. They exist.
Yeah.
And AI is like petting us, making us feel good.
Right. But like what I saw was not an AI that's like a parent. It was like an AI that like Facebook makes or somebody makes to make profit, right? So like capitalism is still running, right? The system is still generating value and making money and stuff. But like if you have no tether to it, like there's no way for you to input. Like you can't get any of the benefit out of the system. Like you or me working a job, we're working for the system in exchange for some benefit, right? I mean, things like security or having money, which is like kind of a security thing too. Having health benefits, again, it's like a security thing. Most things are like that, like in the security kind of realm. Like we basically trade our
of Maslow's. You're talking
No,
about?
I'm talking about like our interaction with society. Like we basically trade off our time and effort for like security.
Like we'd rather be secure than living a life of novelty.
I mean that's what we've done.
Or we try to like live a life of novelty with TV while having security.
I'm just saying that we more broadly, the point that I'm trying to get at is my realization was that we participate in society in this way, and that as our ability to interface with the system in that way is crowded out by machines, you don't have a way to make that trade-off anymore. Like even if you wanted to go to a job to make money to buy groceries, you couldn't
because you would rather have the security.
No, I'm saying you in a future where automation is taking over labor, even if you were willing and able to work, a lot of people wouldn't be able to because there just aren't enough jobs because computers or machines, robots are just better than people, and there's only let's say there's I don't know how many people are in the United States. Let's say there's 300 million people in the United States, and there's only 100 million jobs. What do the other 200 million people do? It's like, okay,
numbers game here.
It's like it's like they have to presumably they have to make money or get money or food at the very least in some way. Like people need food to live.
So how do they live fulfilling lives?
Well, how do they live at all is my question. Really, it's like
because they're living like meaninglessly.
No, I mean like, how do you get food? Was my question.
The machine would have to provide it for them.
Why?
Like UBI, that's why I think it's so important.
So UBI is a big key in helping this. But I mean, it was like when I was 16 or whatever, I was like, how do people, like, if they can't interface with the system, how do they? I mean, like, what do we have? Like, big charities that do this, or So that was kind of the ideas that I was playing with.
But we wouldn't have any
But that transition was what worried me, because I knew that there would be something like UBI, which I had heard of, or charity, but also next to that, there would have to be a huge cultural shift. People would have to understand what their values are and understand what's fulfilling, and then so much of the culture would shift. But I just didn't know how. I just knew it would be very chaotic, and I couldn't predict how it would play out, and I was concerned about that.
So now, like, fulfillment, switching up gears here. So, like, if you're working a job and you don't find it fulfilling, but then you get this realization of what your values are, and you now can equate the once unfulfilling job with a link to the values of your ideal, do you now find fulfillment in that job? Or is there something subconscious that's like directing us to fulfilling work? Like the fact that I'm not finding fulfillment in this job, even though I don't know what my values are, do I change it up? Do I stay there? And that dissatisfaction, is that the guide that we should be following?
Yeah, I think it's both. I think there's stuff that relates pretty hard line to like biological drivers. But yeah, I mean, we're more than just hardware, we're also software. And so having some sort of life philosophy shift can definitely change the way you look at your job, or that you look at the world in general.
So having that realization, you think, would give you fulfillment in your life. So yeah, it's a mindset thing more so than like this subconscious biological like driver that's like happening behind the scenes.
Yeah, I think it can be that, and probably a lot of times that the software can override the hardware. Yeah, but it's usually both, and it's usually pretty good to.
It's both. Yeah, I could agree with that.
It's good to pay attention to when something feels unfulfilling or monotonous. At the very least, just to think about why.
Right. Why people at a factory job are like, this work is meaningless, but I'm doing it for my family. Mm-hmm. And then that's what like gives them the drive to work there for 30 years.
Right. And so what I meant by why though is, and that is good though, that people should like put in perspective, but the why of like, why am I feeling this way? Like, which directs you to look at what your values are. So it's like, okay, well, I feel like going to work, it is exhausting, and I'm like tired to get up in the morning. I don't want to go. To me, one of my first questions is like, why? Like, why is it so dissatisfying? Like, what's the, like, other people do it. Like, why is it not working for me? That's sort of my default state to go to. And I think that's a good place to go. Like because doing that exercise over time, you start to learn what your values are more consciously, and then you can orient yourselves intentionally.
Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of to answer that, like for my personal why or whatever, like if I'm feeling dissatisfaction, I think a lot of it has to do with like my expectations are too high than what's reality. Mm-hmm. Like if I'm valuing novelty over like doing good for humanity, and I'm like not being consciously aware of that, then like me sitting on my phone and wishing I was traveling the world and meeting people and like doing outdoor adventure shit, that novelty far surpasses me like helping or like doing a job that like is monotonous, but it's like having a benefit for society. Mm-hmm. So I think it's like that ego that like takes over, that like, well, it's like emotional at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But that's not what makes us have a meaningful life. Like it's a distraction. Like novelty is a distraction. Media attention is a distraction from maybe what's most meaningful.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, it's set up to game our hardware mostly, like
because it's triggering our lizard brain.
Yeah. Social media and stuff like that, advertising, a lot of things we could list off are. I mean, they're designed to like hit your hardware. And
that's fucked up.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like that's how you sell things, though. That's how you sell things.
And that's why I think we have a society right now where everyone feels like their lives are meaningless because they're constantly surrounded by media, and they feel like they should be doing something else with their life. That's so sad, to be honest. Yeah. And we can't get away from it, and it's only going to get worse. But like at the end of the day too, it's like it's gonna come to a point where with this like sustainable model where like most of the work we're not gonna be able to do anyways. So we are gonna be able to have the opportunity to chase novelty. But like that might be at the expense of like raising a family now. Like if you're able to like live a dream life, you're not gonna wanna fucking raise a child.
I don't think people know what a dream life is though. I think people might
look at Instagram. Like the ideal is in the media right today.
I actually don't think. I think most people see, like someone who travels the world and stuff like that. People see that as they think that's amazing and fantastic because they're working because they feel trapped right now. That's why. I think
they have this freedom life.
Yeah,
right?
Because they're lacking freedom in their life. So that when they see someone who is the ideal of life freedom, they're like, "That's what I want." And I mean that's why those people are held so highly by people.
Like the gold standard.
Yeah, like the gold standard. Like this is how you should live, right? I don't think everyone can live like that.
It's exhausting.
Well,
like I have friends that do that.
Wants to live like that. I think what people want is to have more balance of stuff. And when we see something where we feel like we're very lacking, like in autonomy, being able to do the things that you want to do, if you're lacking in autonomy, you're going to see someone who exemplifies that and be like, that's what I want my life to be like. Just because you feel like your emotions are that, I don't have any autonomy. Like, autonomy is what I need. And it's like what's always on your mind subconsciously or consciously. Mm-hmm. And so you see something that exemplifies that and you're like, that's it. That's what I want. That's the example of what I want. I don't think people actually want that though. I think people want a balance of stuff.
And then like, that's what sells. Like I'm guilty of it. Mm-hmm. Like we have a business that we do media of like us traveling and doing like cool shit. Yeah. And like, I'm sure putting that shit on media, like makes people feel like have FOMO and like feel crappy about their life. And it's like it sucks because it's like you want to be able to live the life that you want to live, but like you also are tied to having it be a business and you're getting money from people that buy into that business. This is just like the honest truth. And it's like selfish to a certain extent because it's like you're living a life that you want to live while it's at the expense of like someone having this like deep-seated emotional like torment, so to speak. But like at the same time, it's like that's what the whole platform of capitalism is built on. Like that's how we also progress as a humanity too. It's like the people that do journey off and do their own like things and be authentic to themselves. That's like the conundrum I always face is like, I want to live an authentic life, but at the same time, I know it could be at the mercy of like other people. Like even like any new ideas is a disruption to the society equilibrium. Like society as a whole needs that innovation, but at the same time, it causes suffering to do such a thing.
To innovate, make new ideas you're talking about?
Make new ideas, make new pieces of content, media, like push culture. You can. It's so hard to have it both ways because, like, at the same time, it's like you're providing a value too. Because, like, what if you're creating like an entertaining content? Well, people could idealize that content and be like, "Wow, that person's living an amazing life." Blah blah blah. But they're disconnected to it, like if it's a celebrity. But like, what if it's your friend that you grew up with, and you're like, oh shit, like that guy that I went to high school with, he's living that life now. It's like, fuck, I could have been doing that. So I think as like celebrities, we need that level of disconnection. And then at the same time, it's like at the mercy of like the individual, like the celebrity, because it's like now they're lonely as fuck because society doesn't want to interact with them anymore. Well, not in that like intimate kind of way.
Yeah, like in a human way.
It's so sad.
Yeah, I mean that's again just emergent properties of the system.
And it's like, what do you choose, man? Because like, I don't know, I'm having an existential crisis.
Yeah.
Because it's like I want to live a meaningful life, but at the same time, I don't want to do harm to people.
Yeah, I mean that's good that you're thinking about that. That's kind of what I see as like the whole. That's kind of like what I see life is like. That's like figuring out how to live is like is what life is. I think.
Like I'll purposely not talk about good things that are happening in my life because I don't want other people to resent me or not me. It's resent themselves or have negative feelings.
Yeah, or like compare themselves or whatever.
And I feel that, like, I know it's a subconscious thing, and they might not even realize it, but I feel it. I know it's there.
Yeah.
And I don't want to open up and talk about my life with a lot of my friends. Like, even having this conversation right now is like, I respect like other people's space, obviously, and I don't want to like intrude and like come in and like, oh, this is all my fucking great ideas and shit. And like, well, I mean, we align in this kind of way. So it's not like that. But like, if I were to do this with someone who isn't like on that journey with me, that's like trying to find new ideas, it's like they don't want anything to do with it.
Yeah.
and I can just there's so much tension.
Yeah.
Have you ever felt that, like trying to explain AI to someone that like is out of that space? It's just like this deep seated like.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. I can't explain it.
Yeah, I've gotten maybe
it's like fear or like FOMO or I don't know. It's not even AI. It's just ideas in general.
I think it's an uninterest, and I think a lot of it's justified because there are so many things to worry about, and yeah, I mean, I really think it's just an uninterest because there are so many things to worry about. Like someone would love to have a conversation about. Also, I think there's a point to be made that it's difficult to think about complex ideas and things. Like thinking is hard. Understanding yourself and understanding your values and like the meaning of life, like, or even to contemplate that is hard. And if the system is already set up so that you're provided with a purpose just by
to question
just by living. To question it's like, why would I? And people don't even think, why would I? They just don't question it. It's not even a conscious choice of like, should I keep living this life that was just handed to me by society, or these values that are handed me by society, or should I actually contemplate my real values? It's they're still asleep to the idea that there are other values.
Wow.
Like, and you were just given them. It's like here's what you presuppose that these things are valuable, and then you function, you input yourself into society, and that's life.
And it's very prideful to come off in a way, or haughty, I don't know the word, but to like approach someone and speak that truth of like, oh, you're maybe not like at a higher functioning. It's such a, like, even trying to say that it's hard to say. Because it's like very rude.
What to say like you're still asleep to the
values? Like you're not conscious. You're not a higher conscious being, kind of thing. But it could be true, because it's like if we have a higher conscious like AI, it's gonna know everything about you and be able to give you these personalized insights into yourself.
Yeah, I mean
that you would have never figured out on your own.
Yeah, that's what a good therapist does, or a good psychologist does. Like they're able to help you dig into yourself and
get truth.
And to get truth. And like it's not an easy thing, especially when like if you have to tear down your whole belief structure or like world model. I mean, that's like seriously. That's people have existential crisis because they had some experience or some realization. That. If you're 40 years old and you realize like you've lived your whole life doing some unfulfilling job, and what you actually wanted was to, do something else. Like you realize that you missed out on all this fulfilling stuff. Like your whole world model just crashed down, and also like your real life is now completely misaligned from what, from this epiphany that you realize that you have these other values.
And that's like probably probably more than 50% of all the like parents that are on Facebook now, kind of thing. And it's like an illusion too, because it's all just novelty. It's like, oh, this person's doing this cool shit and he's fucking 25. It's like, I missed out on life. But it's like, did you though? Because the stuff that he's doing probably, or she's doing, is not that meaningful. It's more novelty. And like you raising a family is very meaningful. But it still tears everyone's worldviews down, their models of themselves, how society is. Like, us living in this generation, the reason why we are like quote unquote woke is because of all the information that we'd ever want is at our fingertips. Our parents never got that opportunity. And they were living in a lie to a certain extent. They were just living their life to the world model that they were limited to. And now the world model is globally. It's like, I'm sure both my parents feel it. And it's like a subconscious thing too. Yeah. It's they don't understand either, because it's like, I don't know. I guess I can't really say they don't understand because I'm not them. But like, it's like you said, it's a very like higher functioning kind of processing thing. And if you're stuck in that hole too, it's hard to take yourself out of it to see that higher conscious kind of like reasoning and understanding when you're just like in your emotions. You can't think when you're in your emotions.
Yeah.
Life suffering.
Yeah.
It's so sad. So sad.
Yeah, but you got to do the stuff that makes it worthwhile. So
I just feel
that's
like
what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to do the stuff that makes it worthwhile.
I feel guilty, man.
Why?
Like having the conscious awareness of who I am and what my values are and what I want to do with my life, and having the opportunities to do that, and also the work ethic to want to like bust my ass off to get there. Mm-hmm. All that's entitlement. It's something that is like, humanity has never seen that before until our generation.
Seen what?
What I just described.
Like having work ethic and...
No, the opportunity, like higher conscious understanding, the ability to have understanding of the world. Like, the internet has made all of that possible.
I think we had that before the internet. I think we had that when we were living in tribes.
But it would be like the prophet. The prophet would be that one. And you would go to them, and they would like try to help you understand. Like, they were mentors. Like, our mentors are at our fingertips. It's accessible to all of us. And like the interesting thing too is like
we had it then.
It's accessible to everyone, and yet there's probably only like a select few percentage of people that want to go down that path too.
Yeah, because there's too much to know. Like, there's actually just too much to know. The world is way too big for our small brains. Really, like, there's too much to know. The world's too complicated. We can't calculate enough to feel secure. We, what's it called? We hand off a lot of our security and autonomy to outside sources. Like for instance, if no one ever thinks about this, but like consciously, the way that you get your food, you have essentially no control over, or your own security. Right?
I don't think about that. It's just there.
You don't think about it, and it's like, it's just convenient that you can go to the store and you buy it, right? But it's like, it's just one of the ways that you rely on outside systems to do things for you. And I think sometimes that can feel bad, but I mean, obviously, like, relying on other people is like something that's inherent in our evolution. But I think that everything that you what's the word I'm looking for? That you hand off to there's a specific word I'm thinking of. Anyway, but everything that you hand off to some other person or group, to handle it for you, it
decreased level of consciousness.
It takes away the opportunity to do that thing yourself, obviously. Mm-hmm. And then, but what that means is that you now have less control over your own life, basically. Like, because you're giving out control all over the place.
But it's also ignorance is bliss kind of thing. Like, you don't have to deal with it now.
That's why we do it. Yeah. But it's like, it's at the expense of our ability to do fulfilling, satisfying things.
Yeah. And that's the thing now is like everyone is kind of like,
to be in control of your world.
I see like two groups of people that like are taking the responsibility to figure out their authentic sense of fulfillment, and then people that are like outsourcing their fulfillment to other people to handle it for them. And then they have this subconscious feeling of like, I'm not feeling fulfilled. Life is kind of meaningless. I'm just like a cog. And that's fair to say, because it's like they are in a sense a cog, because they're doing what the system wants them to do. But like, we are too, in the sense of like, but like emotionally we get the fulfillment, because it's like we feel like we have this perceived freedom. That's what it is. It's freedom, feeling like we have autonomy, like you were saying.
Yeah, I wonder how many times Ted Kaczynski said autonomy in that essay. He said it so many times. Almost the whole thing's about autonomy.
It's fake though. we don't have autonomy. It's just that, I was thinking about this too. Like Instagram, Facebook, it is a platform where now we can like have a greater sense of fulfillment if you're like a multimedia producer. Because that now you can do your craft that you enjoy doing and make money off it, and hopefully you're sustainable. There's that opportunity. But where is it going with this?
You realize something about autonomy?
But you're still chained to that system. So like that perceived freedom.
Yeah, like having a car. Like you're free to drive wherever you want. But you have to drive on the road, obey all the traffic laws, do your registration, have insurance, work a bunch so that you can afford the car in the first place.
It's an illusion.
Yeah, it's like you have the freedom to do certain things, but now you also, with that, just got a bunch of tasks and requirements.
And same thing with us. If you're an entrepreneur or creative, think about how much extra stress we have in our lives because we're like, I gotta create that song. I have to like go home and make that video. It's like fulfilling, but it's like extra work now. Whereas like someone who isn't going down that path, they can come home and do whatever they want after work. But now we have to work and work some more.
Yeah, I guess it depends on what place you're coming from in creating content or creating a song or whatever. Like if you're creating a song because it's fulfilling to do, it's very different from like if you're creating a song because you have to. Like then you don't have autonomy. Like
True.
If you're someone like Jacob Collier who just loves to make music and it's just like a little kid with music, I'm sure there are times where it's like grindy and it's like shoot, I had some deadline that I set for myself, or there's some deadline for someone else to get them something and I have to grind now and it's like hard. But if more of it comes from a place of pursuing fulfillment, it's very different from like if it's just always a deadline thing.
Yeah. And just saying that like reminds me of these pop singers that are like kind of cogs in the music industry, and they're just meeting deadlines to make money. Yeah. And then they just hate music.
Yeah. I mean, some of them I'm sure are okay, and they're like,
but it's like
the life that I have is great, or maybe they're asleep to their own values, or maybe they are feeling terrible. I don't know. I'm sure it's different in a lot of cases, but
and it's even worse because the masses look at these pop stars and they're like, you have all this money and fame and you should be so happy, but they're not. Yeah. And they're wondering, why am I not fulfilled? Well, to go back at it, like they don't know their values. They don't know what's meaningful, and that takes a lot of work to figure out.
Yeah, and even the people who are looking at celebrities and saying like, wow, like that's the life. Like to me, that just signals
insecurity.
To me, it signals that they don't even know their own values. Like, if you think that that's, and I shouldn't lump them all together because there are people who have fame and money and stuff like that who have great lives. But there are, to look at someone who has a bunch of fame and money, but clearly is, if someone's like feeling sad or they put a tweet about something and it's like, you have all the fame and money in the world though, you should be like happy, not tweeting about how you're sad. To me, that just shows that person completely misunderstands what their values or broadly like human values are.
And how to be happy.
Yeah. Because it's like if you're looking at someone who just has, if you're marking someone by their fame and money and then saying they should be happy because of that, you're missing out on what human values are. Like you're just misunderstanding something. Because although those are, to a certain extent, those are important things. Like being, fame you could put into the box of like being part of it, or being part of a tribe, or like being well liked in your group, which is obviously important for evolutionary reasons. Like if you're hunting in a hunter-gatherer kind of thing. And also having a bunch of money is great because that means a lot of things. Like money is such a dense. It's a very dense like proxy for fulfillment, I guess. Because it's like it's security,
Mm-hmm.
It's also the ability to have control over your world. I mean, probably
this kind of aligns.
Another list, a whole list of things, but
so I had this idea where it's like we have self-awareness. I post it like on the story, but we have self-awareness to figure out our intrinsic values, and once we know our intrinsic values, then we can use extrinsic values to meet that level of fulfillment for ourselves. So like, if you know what your value set is, then you can use money and fame as a way to get that value.
Right. Like,
which is like, because like money and fame is like this externalized value but like, why you have to question it deeper. That's just like the superficial reason.
It's a proxy. Yeah. It's just like getting good at golf because it satisfies your drive for mastery or something.
And that's what we should be figuring out, is like the deeper underlying values.
Yeah. Well, that's what Ted Kaczynski was talking about. He was talking about surrogate activities, and I think we talked about this a little bit. Did we talk about surrogate activities at some point?
No, I don't know. Probably.
It was. I think it was It was maybe a couple months ago now. But a surrogate activity is basically anything that is not needed for your survival, but you do because, I guess, more or less because you have free time and like all your biological needs are met. So a good test is like if,
like the leisure activities.
Yeah, it's a kind of good way to put it. Like leisure, as in,
like the weekend golfer.
Yeah, or even like, I guess that's a good enough example. But anyway, that's one of the things that he talked about a lot in his essay, surrogate activities, and how it's like, sort of
distracting us away from our real values.
Well, it's attempting to satisfy our real values, like by proxy. So you have. Things that they're close enough to, for instance, like mastery of whatever, like golf. It's like, okay, well, that's close enough for my hardware to be.
But they're not.
Yeah, you're mastering something, but it's like, why master golf?
Right.
Why be good at golf? So useless. Like from a practical standpoint, or like from a standpoint of like how you evolved, or like what's actually satisfying. It's like golf is not valuable at all.
Well, you ever hear
even though like I'll say if society was torn down, being good at golf, like if society was torn down and you had to like hunt for your food or like farm your food or like live in like a small tribe or something, golf is completely useless. Literally, I can't think of any way that is useful at all, really, other than you're like physically coordinated. But you don't need to do golf for that. And even though we're not living in that kind of a world where we're required to hunt our own food or gather or live in small groups and cooperate and stuff like that, even though that's not what our society necessitates, our biology is more or less still living like the world is like that. Because it wasn't that long ago that the world was like that on evolutionary timescales. So more or less our bodies are still living in that kind of a world, but just plopped inside of this different structure. So that's why like we're trying to fulfill our needs that we evolved to need, like to cooperate with people or to have mastery of things, to be independent. So I mean, more or less, like we're still living like it's 10,000 years ago, but just with like cool phones.
That's insane.
And golf. Yeah.
It's like giving a monkey a gun.
Yeah. I mean, but that's a thing too. Yeah.
You were talking about like people have like surrogate activities like golf. You ever hear like saying like, oh, like people retire and they're like, oh, I could only play golf for so many rounds, and then I just got bored, and now I'm back at working.
Oh yeah.
Kind of thing where it's like their whole life they've been working and maybe they weren't aware. They're definitely not aware of their values, and they're just like I don't know. And then they get retirement, right? And then they still don't know what their values are, and they're doing circuit activities to pass the time, but they're not looking deeper within. And that's like the perfect opportunity. But like you're old at that point, and you don't want to just like flip your world model upside on its head.
Yeah, right.
But it's like if they have the opportunity to figure out themselves when they retire, and they have the time and financial security to do that, and yet they still aren't. And if they did, then they would live the rest of their 65 to death, like creating more meaning in their life that they didn't have the opportunity to have before.
Yeah, but
because like us,
our system's not set up for old people though. Like as an old person.
Thank you.
Yeah. As an old person, you have almost no input into the system, really. Like,
not now.
It used to be like you were respected as an elder. Like if you're the oldest person in the tribe, you're pretty much the wisest person in the tribe because you've been alive for the longest. You know how the world is. Have all this life experience you can dispense to the younger people.
So coming off as not what?
Wait, what?
Coming off as like, oh, that person's still trying to figure it out, and you're fucking like 70 years old.
No,
doesn't look good.
Well, what I'm saying is like they actually don't have inputs because all the wisdom that the framework where you go through life. You do a bunch of things like, that are fulfilling, and you get old, or things are not fulfilling, whatever. But you do a bunch of things in our life, you gain a bunch of experience and wisdom, and then there's a sort of framework for you to dispense that wisdom to the younger people, right? That does not work today because the world that my grandparents grew up in. It really doesn't resemble much of the world today. Like even the wisdom of go to school, work hard, and get a job, that basically doesn't work anymore, really. So that's the wisdom that our parents are giving us. Really not good wisdom anymore. Like the world is changing too fast for our elders to really have an input. Honestly,
damn,
so it's like,
true.
So it's like you get old, and then it's like, I mean, what do you have to do? Like, I mean, you can connect with your grandkids, kind of, but like, again, your worlds are very different. Like, you can't relate to them in a lot of ways, really.
Like this,
really, like the world is set up really not good for old people. It's really bad.
That's really good insight. It's kind of like null and void at that point, and
it's not wise anymore.
So yeah, it's that.
It's just things are not wise like perpetually. Like it's wise based on your world and environment. And if the world changes too much, your old wisdom's just old wisdom.
So, man, two things. It's like extrinsically, it's not helping the people, and internally, they probably have this ego of like, oh, I'm old, I know everything about the world, and so they don't question anymore. And they create this conservative idea of like, oh, I just gotta like survive, basically, and I'm not willing to keep learning, kind of thing. But like I said, there's opportunity to question even at that age because you have all this free time now. So that, and then, what was the other thing? I don't know. I hate that, man.
Same, dude.
That's why I need to record it.
Yeah. At least you got one half. Something about...
Oh, yeah. Oh, how cool would it be if, like, we create a media company that, like, speaks truth. Actual truth. Like, actual wisdom. Like, how crazy is that? Like, a news station that actually gives us, like, not news, but, like, insight into the human. I guess that's kind of like what BOHO is, is like what we're trying to do with that.
Yeah.
But like I'm surprised that's not a thing.
What?
That there isn't like some big news station that's doing that already. That's like actually trying to educate us. Well, I guess so. Like NPR, TED.
Yeah, but I think there is stuff like that. It's just to scale it and make it profitable is almost impossible, because, like I said,
no one wants to hear the truth.
Yeah, I mean, and there's too many things to know. The world is it's simply like, you can kind of sum it all up, and the world is too complicated for us.
But that's so fucking interesting.
Yeah, but
like it's a nonstop quest.
Yeah, but like to for a lot of people to think about, wow, the world is so complex and we're inept to deal with it. All the time you're spending thinking about that is time you should be spending like living in it and like trying to like keep up. So like any time thinking about like like maybe the system's broken, we should try to fix it. It's like, that's kind of like, not only is it difficult, but it's also like kind of, well, I don't think I can fix it, so like I should probably just keep grinding.
Dude.
Yeah.
It's like, have you seen The Matrix, right? Uh-huh. Like blue pill, red pill thing.
Yeah.
Like everyone takes the blue pill because the red pill is just too hard to swallow.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and there's too much distraction too. Like you, fuck. Yeah. I mean, really, just the world is too complex.
Yeah, we won't know the full truth.
The truth of what?
Yeah, because it's constantly changing. But
truth,
like, there's general
truth of like how to live. You mean, or?
Yeah, because it's like you said, like how to live as a someone going through the industrial age, where like just working in a factory was like a high notarized field. Like you have a job and there's new technology. Like that was a cool thing to work in the factories. And then it just gets outdated. And then there's new technology. Oh, so this like full circle back to like the original conversation is like, wherever the technology is, that's where the wisdom lies. Because it's like, since technology is the big thing that controls how our influences of society, it's like you look at that and you look at how it's having that influence. And it brings out a lot of philosophical truths and psychological truths, sociological, all the different social sciences is like rooted in technology because it's that dramatic of an impact it has on us. That's cool.
Yeah, it's also scary because even if you might advocate for people to pay more attention to technologies and understand how they affect us and stuff like that, but in practice, getting everyone to understand technologies and how they affect us a lot better, to me, it just increases our appetite and our drive to like make them affect us more, like on a societal level. So like it just raises the bar. So like we'll just make more things that like we'll just keep it actually, I think, accelerates
it does, yeah,
the drive to make technology, like, you know, because of novelty.
More meaning of your life is needed now. Because it's like you reach that bar of like understanding, and you're like pushing the envelope of like what brings you satisfaction in your life. Because like you're uncovering more meaning as you're doing this. Well,
I think also we built a system where progress is the utility function. Like that's what the system is for progress. So it's like to stop. It's like that just doesn't compute. It's like the whole system is built to make new novel stuff.
Like, to fix problems too.
Yeah,
that's a big part.
Yeah, that too.
So it's like as we discover more, we find more problems, and we're like, I gotta fucking fix that now too.
Yeah.
That's the acceleration.
But I think the most of the problems that we have now are coming from the things that we create. I think, I mean, obviously there's still problems that can be solved, like
hunger,
like world hunger. I mean, that's not a product of capitalism, you know, like that's a product of like, I mean, it's not like making iPhones made world hunger, although maybe it did in some way because there's gold mining or something in Africa. But anyway, like there are problems that, there are some problems which are not a product of like capitalism, but a lot of, or technological progress, but a lot of our problems are a product of, probably more are a product of technological progress. Like all the questions about like the data privacy thing, we created that problem. Car accidents, we created that problem. Pollution,
even like the Black Lives Matter thing is like, it was a video technology that offset or like that spurred the protest. The riot, like all of it. If it wasn't for everyone seeing that video, none of this would be so widespread.
I mean, I guess it's good that it was widespread, but I think one of the things that, I don't know if I want to get too much into that actually, but
yeah, let's just bypass that. That gets a little. It's too early to question it.
No, I've been questioning it. I mean, before George Floyd, but yeah, I would actually recommend. I'll send it to you. You know Sam Harris?
Yeah.
He had a recent podcast that came out. Did you
about it?
Yeah.
Oh.
And
he's gonna spit some facts.
I more or less agree with everything that he said, and most. Yeah, I mean he has a few disclaimers as he's talking. Like, okay, no, I just want you to know what I'm about to say will probably trigger some feeling of offense in you. Just disclaimer. And I just want
though.
I just want you to be ready for it because it's gonna hit you.
Yeah.
And there's like 3 or 4 of those. And yeah. But it's like,
what was the response to it?
From other people? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just listened to it and I was like, yeah, thank you, Sam. Like, more or less everything that I was thinking. Which felt really nice to feel not crazy. Because it's, I mean, yeah. I didn't think I was, I actually was pretty sure that I was thinking along the right lines. Or, although another person's validating what I'm thinking doesn't mean I'm right. But it was nice to hear someone like basically like who I respect like agreeing with what my thoughts were or that their thoughts were aligned. That felt nice. But
and on that note, I'm gonna go watch it.
Yeah, definitely should. It's really good.